All right. Welcome to season 2 of the Game Dev Show. Not our sophomore album. This is going to be not a sophomore slump. Season 2, back and better than ever. Right?
Yep.
The Taylor Swift of podcasting, as we've been called. Yeah, I just called us that.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, so self-proclaimed.
Self-proclaimed Taylor Swift of podcasting. Kaylee Hurst and Luke Greenaway.
Greetings. This isn't a filler
Your hosts,
season.
your friends, your...
That's it really now.
Yeah, hosts and friends.
Yeah, hosts and friends. Great guest. Will.
Okay, yeah. So our guest this week, Ville Rauma. His name potentially is pronounced Ville, but he did say we could call him Will, so I'm going with Will.
Yeah, safe. How did you find it?
It was great. I think my favorite part, and I say this during the episode, he used this word tinkering.
It's so funny because I hear that word all the time.
It's not like I don't know that word. It's just a good word for that stage. It's just like, it's a good word for that stage in your creative process where you're just like messing around with a thing. And so he said that in the context of this game development funnel that he's been sort of instrumental in creating. And that part of the conversation was my favorite part.
Nice. Yeah, I get that. I like to tinker. You know, I think a lot of people...
What do you tinker with, sir?
Yeah, just like, you know... I don't know. Anyway, should we crack on?
Okay, let's get into it. I made Luke uncomfortable. Okay, well, let's start at the beginning. Can you tell us about where you grew up, what you were like as a kid, and how you got into games?
Yeah, so I'm from a place called Tornio in Lapland province.
A beautiful pronunciation.
Yeah, we like our R. So R's in Finland and in Lapland province, so it's up north in Finland. It's like 900 kilometers from Helsinki, if you know Helsinki. It's a like interesting place because it's a border city, just like on the Swedish border. So basically, there's just a bridge. There's no like any kind of proper like border. There's no checks or anything. You just drive past, and then you're in Sweden. So it's kind of like one of those kind of unique places in that sense. And as a kid, it was super common to go to Sweden, get some candy, because there's different prices, there's different things, interesting things. Nowadays, everything is quite easily available, but back then, like in the 80s, it's like Swedish people would have totally different candy, totally different ice cream, you know.
No, same growing up in the US, just going to Canada to get candy. That was all I cared about.
Yeah.
It wasn't even like the one I remember was, I think it's called an Aero bar, and it's basically like a Hershey's milk chocolate bar, but with bubbles in it. Yeah. Not bubbles that do anything when you eat them, just like empty spaces. So yeah, foreign candy, nothing better.
Yeah, and also like I guess one point is because it's Finland, it's quite cold. There's like the river, which is Tornio River, which is between the Haparanda, which is the Swedish city, and then Tornio. It ices over, and then we had a snowmobile, so you could take the snowmobile and drive over the river and go to Sweden to get candy.
Oh my God, you're selling me on this. That sounds so fun.
Yeah.
Take the snowmobile to Sweden to get foreign candy.
Yeah, it's like it's one of those things that you realize that are super weird to everybody when you're adults. Yeah. You never thought about it as a kid, like it's ordinary for you, but for everybody else.
Oh, that's cool. I like that story.
Yeah, and So I went to primary school and high school there. Basically, what I really liked to do as a kid, I read like tons and tons. I've always been a big reader, like fantasy, sci-fi, everything like that. And I guess games kind of naturally fall into the similar category. That like the first time I saw a proper kind of game, I think was like when I was 6 or 7 years old at my cousin's place, and I went to this birthday party, and there was everybody was like around this TV, and I was like, what's going on? And they were playing R-Type on Commodore 64. So that was kind of when I kind of fell in love, I think. The music and everything, it was so cool. And I don't know if you probably know R-Type, but that's like one of the very beautiful games on Commodore 64. They kind of nailed the graphics really well. But then I just had to have it, of course. It's like then starts the kind of pleading and all that with the parents. Like,
did it work? Did you get a Commodore?
Yeah, not right away, but like maybe
Okay.
a year later. Like what actually happened is my father bought the Commodore 64 off my cousin, and he went on to I think Amiga or something like that. But but basically, and then he had like a literal like sack full of like the games. Like there was like probably
Yeah.
200 or something like cassettes. So there's a lot to go through. But yeah, that's like kind of how I got started.
That's great. So then how did you end up working in the games industry? Can you tell us about that
Yeah,
progression?
yeah, definitely. And it's also like one of those things that I never dreamed of actually like making games, even though like as a kid, we like with our friends, we did some light programming and use some like Visual Basic and stuff like that to make some like small games and some text games and stuff like that. But it was like a kind of hobby for us. But then I went to the University of Oulu. Actually, I did go to computer sciences, so yeah.
Well, like I
So
said, everyone has their own progression. That is one of
yeah,
them.
but yeah, it wasn't like anything straightforward. So basically, I was there studying computer science. I thought I was gonna go to, make software basically, and I really started liking programming. Like one of my friends taught me, he taught me in C first, and then I actually knew C pretty well when I went to the university already. So I was well ahead of everybody else in the class most of the time, and so I found it really easy to be there and like could kind of half-ass all the courses because it was
That is dangerous. Well,
yeah,
for me, that was dangerous in university. When I started half-assing
yeah.
stuff was when I failed classes because I was like, well, I know this.
First year went very very well. I got a lot of points, and then the second year went a bit worse, and then the third year went
Yeah.
really badly. I kind of didn't do almost anything anymore. And I had done all the courses that were interesting to me because you could choose, most of the things. Of course, there's mandatory stuff like oh yeah, you have to learn Swedish in Finnish universities. So yeah, that's a really common place where people drop out is they don't want to learn Swedish.
Oh, yeah.
But I actually did pass my Swedish as well. But
Okay, good.
in the computer sciences in Oulu there was these project courses. So what the point was that you'll actually go to a company and then work for them for one course. It was basically about maybe 3 months, and then that's where you get your points from that kind of thing. And the first one was just some software stuff, but the project two was for me was I saw like the list, and you can kind of try to get to a companies which have kind of decided to take part, and then you can pick and which one you would like to go to. And then I saw a game company there, and I was like, whoa, well, that's the one, of course, I'm gonna pick. And that was a really small startup, and they were making web-based learning games for kids, super basic, but games nevertheless. So I went there, and they were using this kind of obscure thing. It was called Laszlo, so it was kind of Java and its own thing language, but basically almost like Java, and it was very easy for me. So I kind of get on really well with those guys, and they then immediately wanted to hire me, and I was there for the next year. And
That's
of course
great.
that, I guess for me, because I had started learning programming before the university, and kind of all that stuff made me kind of stand out in the company courses. So I went to another one, and it was very easy for me. Like I didn't even try, and people were asking me to work for them.
Oh.
So I guess I did something right.
That's great.
So you would have come out of university a little bit earlier than I did, I think, but it still was at a time where coming out of university and finding a job right away was not easy.
Definitely.
So that's great that you just fell right into it.
Definitely, and there was actually specifically in Oulu. Oulu is the city of Nokia, and Nokia is from Oulu. So Nokia had gone downhill right at the time when I was in the university. So about 2006 and onwards, the mobile side of Nokia, like Apple, started to come and all that stuff. And Nokia was the main employer in the city. So kind of a lot of expectations before that time was that you would go to Nokia to work, if you were a software engineer at least. But that like already in the university when I was there, like I started in 2004, people were saying like, don't take the Symbian courses. That was the operating system and the kind of way you made software for Nokia phones specifically. The kind of the scuttlebutt was already kind of going around that maybe it's not the way to go anymore. It's kind of funny thing about it afterwards, but
you were kind of already feeling like, well, it sounds like too, without knowing exactly what you wanted to do, you saw an opportunity to do something that felt interesting in the games industry.
Definitely. Yeah. By the way, I did drop out. I kind of stayed in the games industry and I dropped out. I was almost done with my bachelor's. I did my like the thesis and all that stuff, but then I saw no reason to go back because
you already had work you wanted to do that you were successful at.
Yeah, I had like for a long time the feeling I should go back and finish it, but then, well, we can see how the things went, but basically never got the chance to do that, and then at some point I gave up. But yeah, I'm kind of jumping forward, so going back. So the next place was, well, I don't know if you want to go through this, but there was a few interesting companies here.
Yeah, we like to kind of get the full picture. I mean, tell us the kind of roles that shaped you and brought you to where you are today.
Yeah, so definitely, so very important company was Tuonela. So Tuonela is like this bird from the Finnish mythology. There's a underworld and all that stuff. But basically, it was a company founded by a friend of mine. I didn't know him back then, but he would become a friend of mine, Jussi Autio. And it was a pure game company wanting to make cool PC games. And basically, they knew nothing about nothing.
They wanted to make cool games, but that was the extent. Okay.
Yeah, and this is an interesting part about Finland in that time was that there already were a few government kind of funding instruments for games companies in around 2007, 2008. They stopped those and then they came back later. But there was like this 2-3 year window where you could actually get funding to found a game company in Finland. It wasn't much. It was like, you get maybe 10K or 15K or something like that. But basically for the, starting costs.
That is crazy.
So did it result in like what you're saying, where people had these ambitions without necessarily the knowledge set to support them?
Yep.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, and that this kind of came up in a way that when I went to my first, like I went to the interview first and the guy was super cool and seemed like to be like the visionary type. So I liked him and then he was like, okay, you're hired, but we can't really pay your salary. They did pay something every now and then, but it wasn't like a real job in a sense. I ended up being a part owner in the company instead, but they had 6 people. Everybody was super into games and wanted to make games, so they had like an artist, they had 2 guys who could program a little bit, and then they had a musician guy and who could make music. So they basically had like the kind of, I guess, early elements of what you would need. But then I kind of saw what they were doing, and they, especially the programmers, like were very early in their studies. So
okay.
I was.
So you were able to come in and sort of like impress people right away, I guess, for lack of a better.
Yeah. So it was interesting that because the guy Jussi had also made some board games and card games as well, designed, and even got a few of them like made and produced into the end result. So they were making a browser version of this game where you kind of lay pipes, and it's like super simple, but it was supposed to be like a multiplayer web browser based game. And I saw the code and I was like, well, this is not gonna work. It was pretty random, and then I kind of fixed it and we got it to work, and it was a working game, but it was there was no pipeline to actually get any money from it.
Okay.
so there was a game, but
built a game.
Yeah, browser game, but but anyways, but I learned so much there. I was there actually 3 years. We ended up doing one, and this is a funny thing. We were doing this kind of massive card game. Basically, idea was that it's a little bit like a board game. It's based on cards. Back then, there wasn't any kind of card-based game like multiplayer games like there are now, like tons of those. But people were actually laughing at us at some events when we were telling about this. We were making a card-based PC game online. But yeah, it turned out not to be so stupid idea, but we didn't make any money.
Like, I wonder where they are now because, like Hearthstone, Legends of Runeterra. There's so many good card games now. Do you regret not making it?
We did actually make the game and it worked, but it was a very weird time when Sun Microsystems, they were kind of supporting us, especially towards the end, and they got bought by Oracle, and they kind of shut down the project that we were basing it on, so the backend server systems and all that stuff, and kind of things. It was possible maybe we could have continued, but at that point it was also difficult because we were running out of money and all that stuff. But the game basically worked. It was like you could play it, and it was very interesting. It's not
basically worked is all you need.
Yeah, yeah, but it was very like big learning time for me, like learning about like making games in general, the whole process, like first time going through from the idea to actually making it, and then playing it when it's kind of done and all that. So next one actually was a big thing for me. I went to this company called Ludocraft. They're still around. They made first this Unreal mod called Air Buccaneers, and then when I went there, we made a full version for Steam of Air Buccaneers. It's there. I think it's still playable there, where you fly with air balloons, like ships which are flying with air balloons and shoot cannons at each other. We were a little bit ahead of our time. It was based on communication, so you had to actually use voice over IP to kind of communicate so the ship would work, because you would have to have like the driver and the cannoneer, and somebody would have to load the cannons and stuff like that. So people weren't really using. It was around 2011, so people weren't talking with people they don't know on VoIP like nowadays. People talk to strangers in games. That didn't happen like 2011. Like nobody would speak to anybody if they didn't know who they were. So that kind of flopped, and they had to kind of let people go. So I left at that point, and went for a little while to work on just software development, because there were no game development jobs around. But yeah, that was the early career there, and very interesting things. Like we were actually, I think, the first PC game that got through Steam Greenlight, because when it was introduced first, and you had to have like 100,000 likes or something like that on Steam.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Steam never actually published it, but they told us like it's a large number.
Oh, that's so cool.
An impressive number. So then how did you end up at Fingersoft?
That was a interesting thing. Once again, I guess everything is things are weird when you look at it from hindsight.
All the weird paths that had to connect in a specific way to lead you to where you are, right?
Yeah, so I was working for this company that was making. So we were using Unity 3D for non-gaming applications. So we were basically making a software people would use to buy certain products, and which have to be configured, like, I don't know, so fast and stuff like that. But it was super boring for me. I was there for a year. I was kind of looking for a way out almost all of the time. Like I have to get back in the games because it was so boring. And then I saw this news that in the local newspaper that there's this company in Oulu which has 100 million downloads on this game called Hill Climb Racing. And so I was like, well, that's where I need to go.
Yeah, go check it out.
Yeah, definitely. And then I started asking around, like, who knows these guys? Because it's only like always 120,000 people or something like that. It's not a big place, so usually somebody knows somebody who knows.
That's kind of nice.
Yeah. So, but the story is even weirder, because what ended up happening is that my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, is she actually knew one of the kind of founding members of the company from school.
Oh, cool.
So, like, do you know anybody who might know this Teemu guy? And like, I know Teemu.
Oh, that's cool. So you had like kind of a decent in from the start.
Yeah, so she just sent him a few, like first time he didn't answer, then second time she was like, I have this really good programmer here who would like to possibly get an interview. And then he was like, okay, whatever, he can come in, and I got the job. So yeah, I started as a backend programmer. So that was the kind of way in.
That's so good. And because you've had like several roles at Fingersoft since you've been there, like obviously you worked your way up from product owner to COO and acting CEO. Like, how do they compare?
Yeah, hugely.
Yeah.
So the backend programmer gig, that was very interesting. And at the time, this was like 2004. So the kind of problem I came in to solve was that we have this game which has millions of daily players, and we would like to show them ads, which was fine. Like you already had kind of the ad technology existing, but there wasn't what we call mediators nowadays who will kind of, so if you have a large volume, you can have a lot of these different ad kind of companies showing ads. And we need to have a technology to kind of control all of that. And there wasn't really like any good, if you went to the internet to Google it, you couldn't find any solutions back then. There wasn't really like a scalable way of doing these things, which was like well known. And so kind of started tinkering, and we ended up finally kind of solving it and getting it to work really well. It was a really cool thing to be doing something that you can't just Google and do. It's always for anybody who's like an engineer, and
you couldn't figure out a lot from Google, honestly.
Yeah, it's always the running joke that you just go to Google with programmers and kind of you get the solution. There's more to it.
Gets it pretty far.
The information like that's available now, it's making things much easier. But yeah, so that was the first job. But very quickly I became the product owner, and what that meant is that I started pushing myself. That when I saw that we can't really operate this thing. There's so many opportunities, and we can do so much more. But it's just me and one other guy. It's very difficult to do this stuff with just the two of us. So I started pushing that we need more people. And by the way, I was the 12th employee. We didn't have any marketing. We didn't have most of the things you would think a company would have. We didn't have any of those. So it was just a bunch of guys and making the game and doing the other stuff we needed. We had one person in customer support handling all of those millions of people.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's mad.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. We still have probably most efficient customer support people ever.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah,
since like you've been in a C-suite role, like it's been like 5 years, and
yep.
We also read about senior execs, and they can become disengaged with their audit, which isn't like a criticism. It's just that you have other priorities, and you unfortunately just don't have the same amount of time to stay engaged with the community. Like, what do you do? How do you keep in touch with your player base?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and it's interesting as well. I see like I've met a lot of executives over the years and met people, and the way I've been working and the way we work seems to be very different. I guess I have to a little bit explain about how we work. So we call team-based organization. So we only have teams, and then there's me. So basically we don't have any kind of structure in between or anything like that. So the teams are super independent. So each team, like let's say Hillclimb Racing 2 or whatever, they handle the product, they make all the decisions, how they make the game, and it's like the team has pretty much full control of that. And then my job is more like to help them in anything they need. It's more I would say like, what's the term? I think they use some term these days for kind of modern leadership, where you're more like helping.
A flat hierarchy kind of, or?
Yeah, of course, flat hierarchy, but I mean like specifically the type of leadership it is, because it's much more about helping and enabling them to do things rather than any kind of like top down things. But whatever, it doesn't matter.
I don't know the word for it, but I like the sounds of it.
Yeah, the point being, every day almost I'm in contact with the team leads, and I see what's going on. We use Slack, so I see what's going on in all the what support is talking about. Of course, I don't go to every channel. There's probably like 200 channels, but I'm kind of pretty well versed all the time on what's going on and what the players are saying. Of course, when you have like millions of daily players, there's like endless amounts of information and feedback, and we have like I think 60,000 Discord members on Discord on Hillclimb Racing.
Wow. God.
So, and there's one community manager. Luckily, he has a lot of volunteers helping.
So it sounds like you're you're in this leadership role, but you're still very engaged with the player base and with the teams.
Yeah, and I do interviews with the team leads. We really like this, and I specifically myself, I've been pushing, I think, for this model as well in our companies. Like we do things small while doing them big. I don't know if that makes sense, but basically small teams doing big things, because it's just possible these days. You don't need to have huge amount of people to do cool things. because more people always make things more complicated. It's like, you know how it is with communication and everything like that. It feels almost like exponentially going in, even from like we're now 83 people. So going from 12 to 80, it's insane how much things change with communication and so, but I kind of my philosophy is always try to talk as much as I can to all the teams and all the people that are in the teams as well, and get a feel of what's going on and try to help where it kind of makes most sense. And of course, my benefit is because I've been like developing myself so long. It's also that I know most of the stuff like they go through, so it's not completely like somebody is coming in who doesn't know what's going on and trying to tell you like you have to change this and that.
That is a really good point. Like you have done most of the roles that you're managing, so you really have a thorough understanding, you know, of exactly what they're doing and what their hands-on day-to-day is like.
Yeah, art is the only side I can't draw anything, but like stick figures is a challenge.
Oh, but I'm just saying, I think it sounds great though, like what you guys have done. Like it's important to maintain like agility, right? Like small teams. Yeah. I think when there's too many opinions as well, especially in like a creative environment, you naturally conflict can be good for creation, but ultimately you have to make a decision, and I think sometimes you lose that agility and that decisiveness when you have too many opinions.
Our company is very democratic, I would say, and very open, and we've always been. It's been more like a community or something like that than a company where you just come to work. So for us, it's been like we'll talk about the funnel stuff later, but it's been always even difficult to do even basic bureaucracy and stuff like that, which you do need at some point at some level, just because of so many people doing so many things. If there's no rules at all, then it's gonna be a madhouse.
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah, it's that whole challenge of like creativity versus process. Like there has to be a compromise. I was going to ask you actually, like, and we have this, and now I hope I pronounced this correctly. Is it Apaja? Am I pronouncing that? It's on your site, and I was just like, it's crazy because we have so many. It looks like
amazing.
It does look insane, and we have these Finnish devs who come on, and there's something about the Finnish dev community that is so different to a lot of other dev communities in that you're such a family, and we've heard a lot of people from Finnish devs say, you know, we really do communicate across different dev studios with competitors, and everything's about shared learning. What makes it so unique and special for you, like as part of that community?
These days, it's already like so ingrained that it's difficult to even think about a like industry where it wouldn't be like that. It's like I know people who work in completely different industries, and they're like, you can't even talk to somebody from another company. It's like totally like forbidden, and even in games in some countries it's like that. But it's for me personally, of course, it's about the people mostly, because then you meet and know so many people, and it makes games are such a specific thing. They're partly art, partly like engineering. There's like so much stuff that goes into it that I've always felt like there's no really possibility of kind of stealing something. Of course, you can steal like code or stuff, like specific things, but like ideas, and because even if you would have somebody's like design for a game, a different team will make a different game.
That's exactly right. So even if two people had the exact same idea at the same time, and the same like game pitch, it just you're going to create something different. You're totally right.
Of course, wasn't always so. It's IGDA Finland, which kind of I think made it happen, and Neo Games and this kind of Finland is a country for these non-profits, or it's called RY in Finnish, which means like non-profit organization, where like there's tons and tons of those. There's like, I don't know, probably 2 million of those in Finland, and there's only like 6 million people in the country.
Wow, that's crazy.
Everybody, there's one for everything you can imagine. So, so that kind of basis of having these organizations which are trying to improve things on whatever they like. It might be something from, I don't know, cats to game industry
My very bad cat is walking by right this moment.
And I'm pretty sure
cat.
there are tons of different cat-related
cat
organizations. Yeah,
it sounds like it would make going to work every day so fun. Like, because you have your team at Fingersoft that I'm assuming, enjoy spending time with every day, but you also have this broader community of people who are creative and working in the same industry, and that sounds so fun. Do you miss it, like with COVID? And
Yep.
Yeah,
it's
I would miss
mostly
that a lot.
Yeah, it's the events are the best part, of course, when you kind of and
God,
we're up here.
I thought we would be missing conferences. I miss conferences so much.
Yeah, I was so fed up with those. Like, I was traveling so much before COVID, and then now like
I'm assuming.
Yeah, I was going to say I still don't miss them, to be honest.
Really?
That point.
I'm assuming. Were we both at Pocket Gamer Helsinki? Did you do that one?
Yeah. That's been one of the standard ones, of course, because it's so easy to go to. But also London one, and then I think pretty much every last 5 years we've been into San Francisco.
Yeah,
for
GDC.
Yeah, and then Gamescom.
I miss the people, right? Like, I miss catching up with my friends, because it's weird, isn't it? But like, everyone's so busy working on like different projects across different studios. Sometimes, even if it's like your close friends, you only get a chance to catch up with them actually at these conferences.
Yep.
And I really miss like drinking with them.
Yeah.
But the digital versions are so bad that it's almost kind of. Everyone said it though, like everyone we've spoken to, obviously we don't want to knock.
I know, it's not a hot take, is it? Unless any conference organizers are listening, in which case we love your conferences.
Of course, they're cool. Well, they're the best. Yeah.
So awkward. Where do we go from here?
They're the best you can do at this moment.
Yeah, but it's just, do you know what it is yet? Like, I get it with the events industry, right? Like, it's obviously having massive challenges, and the hospitality industry. And I suppose it's very hard to comprehend because we are in like this really lucky bubble of individuals who work in an industry which is actually growing despite COVID. But like, I think we went to sponsor a digital event, and it was the same cost as in person, but there was only 100 people attending. And it was kind of like, God, compared to a footfall of thousands, like it's the same cost. It was just quite hard to take.
Yeah. It's I did a company intro. It was more like a recruitment event. That wasn't too bad, but it's not really like, it's more like you go there, you do your thing, and you close the window. And
unfortunately,
yeah,
they're not like that. It's like a quick disclaimer. If we honestly, it's not like love events, like they're amazing, but the roadshow does get exhausting. Traveling like multiple continents across the year, like you can just, because you feel like you have to be at all of them.
Yeah, and it's like the past 2 years I've been a lot to China as well, and actually I feel like Shanghai has been fairly easy for me, at least. It doesn't feel like I get really bad jet lag for some reason. I think it's like the time difference is 8 hours, so it's just, and it starts from the evening kind of, so you're there early in the morning, so you kind of get actually some sleep in the plane. But
God,
San Francisco,
I just realized that I kind of miss jet lag, like that whole just mess of travel and like being exhausted and being like disoriented and in a new place. I kind of miss it. I kind of miss the jet lag.
Yeah.
Why don't we talk about the game development funnel? And I know that's like a podcast in itself, but it sounds really interesting, and I think kind of speaks to this overall community support that the Finnish game community seems to have for each other.
And this is very personal to me as well. It's kind of my thing. I worked on it for half a year. Of course, I always say it's not really, it's more like I put things together which were already there. So I guess to start with, first kind of have to understand where it came from. And that's to do with how we made Hill Commerce 1 and Hill Commerce 2. And our whole studio is kind of been focused on those games, and we didn't really have anything else going on at the time. Like, we make this game, then we make this game. So it's like one at a time type of thing. Then kind of we got to a point where, okay, now we have these games, they're profitable, they're doing well, we can kind of live ops them, they work, and we can kind of grow them, but they're not really like, you don't put more people in there, like at least like a lot, and it's not like dramatic. It's more like this gradual thing where you kind of always develop the game and always try to make it better. So naturally, like this drive comes from everybody. They want to make new games as well. If you've been working on this game for 4 years or 5 years or something, of course you want to do something else as well. So everybody who was long term working on those, and myself included, like started to feel like we want to do something else as well. So we started figuring out like, so how do we start making new games? Because the track was so clear before that. It was like we have this awesome big success. It works. We know what to do. But then what next? So we first tried to do it in a way that we got a few more people, and then kind of just let some people off from the Hill Climb racing teams, and then they could start making some new games. It wasn't based on an idea of a game. It was more like, okay, these guys can start working on something new. And that kind of was very difficult. It's not that people don't have ideas. People have tons of ideas, but then they always like prototype. Nothing goes forward, and it's kind of how to decide what to do and where to go and which project should be in full production, and all these kind of questions started popping up, and then we realized we have to somehow codify this like in some kind of form. But the problem is with these kinds of things that the creative process in the early section is very hazy, and it's supposed to be like that. I don't think you can make it like a process. It's not supposed to be a process. It's more like you try things, you have ideas, you maybe have some research. You never know how you come up with the cool thing you actually want to make. So you don't want to make it a process. Well, what do you actually do? So then I started doing these small workshops in the company that with the developers. Like, what do you do when you want to make a new game? How do you come up with ideas? What should we do together to enable us to come up with cool ideas? And how do we validate, and how do we kind of figure out which ones are the best or things like that? And it was very like slow and difficult thing to get somewhere because it's so hazy. But after a while, kind of it started to form up into this. And the funnel name comes from just the form of a funnel, that you have a lot of stuff and then kind of filters down, and then you get something, only a few things which come out, because there's always many more ideas than there are capability to actually make those. So I run a lot of like workshops. I had some consultants helping me with the kind of making out how to filter this down into something, because I wanted to have like a super simple way of communicating this to everybody, and then having only the relevant things and not make it like a rule book or anything like that. It's supposed to be more like guidelines and tips and helpful things, and then that's the kind of basis for it. But yeah, then yeah, and and of course there's other stuff. I actually looking at the deck, but it helps me to kind of talk about this.
Reminding you of all your great work.
Yeah. Well,
I think creativity needs collaboration. No matter how good your idea is, you need to be able to talk to people about it to fully develop it.
Say that to Mozart, you know?
How do we know Mozart didn't collaborate? Do you know, Luke?
I know, me and Mozart go way back, I mean.
Okay.
But that's actually not a bad point. Like, it's this old school hero thing, which is very common in games industry.
That's interesting, yeah.
And we had that as well, like hero developers who would come in and save the day type of thing. And that was one of the aspects that developers found that it's not a good thing. It's of course, it's great that we have really good talented developers, but it's not the point of somebody is making something by themselves. It's the product is going to be better if you have a team who work on it. So you can make much bigger and cooler things. So that was one important kind of aspect of the whole thing, is that we're kind of trying to help people form teams and help people work on things together, because the tendency is, at least in Finland, people are quite often happy to work by themselves. It's a really, I don't know if might be an engineer thing as well, but because you have your own cool thing, you know, like if you ask people, everybody has some project they want to work on. We can't be making like 40 games. We have to pick something that we work on. So how to do it in a way which so that people don't get offended, and you can't make a good team. I at least I believe that you don't force people. You kind of find a way where people want to work on that.
Yeah.
So it's a cool thing.
That what you just said, you know, like is creating something that people want to work on. I think that's so. Obviously, you have to have like very good diplomatic skills to be able to do that, which I imagine you have. You sound like you have very good diplomatic skills. But yeah, I do think that like not making it about the individuals, because it is 100% about collaboration, because obviously even people away from video games and working, we do so much better when we collaborate than when there's conflict. But you do need like someone to come up with that idea, you know, like someone, often it's someone who has an idea or a project. They're like, that we should do this. And everyone's like, oh my God, let's do that. And everyone, because the person who has the idea often isn't the best person at implementing said idea. They need people to develop or draw or artists. And that's when I think projects are at their best. And it sounds incredible that you guys have actually created this process to do that.
And I didn't know it would actually work. I kind of thought that there's all the things that you need in there, and it comes from the developers. So I didn't make it up like myself. Of course, there's a lot of my philosophy and my thinking, like how I work things, but the kind of fundamental values and all that, of course, that's already in the company, the way we think. It's, I guess there's ways to change values of a company, but I think it's usually means changing the people who work there. So
it's usually like, you're right. The values are sort of intrinsic to the people, and a company can't change them. All they can do is articulate them.
Yeah, definitely. So, but yeah, it's like the way we kind of found the structure is that there's a first phase, which is the hazy one, and that's called tinkering. And that term actually comes from, I was reading some book, and there was a section about 3M, you know, the tape manufacturer. They make everything. Basically, they had this process of tinkering already, like probably in the 80s or something, where they would allow people to, if they had an idea, they would give you like, you go pitch it, and then they would give you like 10K or something. Go into your garage and, you know, make something. And I was like, well, that's what it is in the very early phase where you don't know what it is. It's tinkering. So I kind of fell in love with the word itself. And
I like that word too.
Yeah.
I actually wrote it down because I like that word so much. Like, just for whatever creative field you're in, whatever you're creating, this stage of just like playing around with the idea and seeing what you can do.
Definitely. And the concept was already there, but the name was something else. I don't remember anymore. But clearly this term worked. I always like
tinkering.
Names have a lot of power.
They do.
I'm always thinking about that when you make any kind of new thing or new system or whatever. I always think very carefully, like, what is the name?
Yeah. Have you seen Spirited Away?
I haven't.
Away? Oh, okay.
It's on the list.
I was just going to say, because it's about the power of names. The whole thing is, and someone has their name taken from them. And because they don't have a name, they have to get their name back. But it's amazing. You should watch it.
Okay.
And also came to mind that have you read The Creative Inc?
Okay, I'm writing that down too.
Yeah, about Pixar. But that's an awesome book. It's about like how Pixar came to be before Disney bought it. Of course, I don't know what it is now, but like the early days. But that's super like cool book, and there's tons about how they figured out how to do best organized creative company in a way where the ideas are the things which we're kind of bringing up and not trying to own things. And it's like people have this tendency wanting to say that I came up with this and I try to own things.
I'm so bad at that. I'm the worst.
And
you know what though, Luke? You always give credit to other people for their ideas too, which is
I do. You know, I mean, like, honestly, and I think the harder bit is actually implementing the idea than coming up with the idea.
And I think that's just natural thing.
I'm so bad at that. Like, even my girlfriend hates that I do that. Like, anything, if I've thought of it, I'm like, oh my God, you're literally telling me what I told you. Like, and she gets so angry because she's like, you can't just claim these as ideas. They're just like,
like, you're like, we should have chicken for dinner. And she's like, okay, let's have chicken. And you're like, I just said that. That was my idea.
I'm like, God, think of your own dinner. Like, I'm so bad. It is something I need to work on, like 100%. Sorry, please, like, sorry.
No.
Okay, well,
but that's,
we're all a work in progress.
Yeah, definitely. It never ends. Well, someday, but hopefully, like until the end, you're learning. my grandfather lived to be like 94, I think, and he was saying
great.
like, and he was fully like there, like almost to the end, and he was saying like at 90 or something. Like it's not that you grow up in your head; it's like just your body gets old.
No, yeah, I already feel that. I see my face looking older than it did when I was 16. It's confusing to me.
Yeah. You know, when you're adult and you're actually making some money, you can do cool things. Like I build drones and stuff now.
I know.
Oh, wicked. That's amazing.
To my kids all the time, because they're like, being an adult is super fun because you actually like have money to do all the cool things that you wanted to do when you were a kid.
But then you have to be at work most of the time.
I know.
Yeah, they don't realise that. Yeah, like they go to 50 hours a week to actually enjoy yourself, and then by the weekend you're so tired you just want to like.
Oh god.
Oh dear.
But, a few more things about the funnel. So just like a quick overview. So first you tinker, then it's about the team and the communication. So we have this kind of questions that like we ask that, can I get other people excited about this? So that's the kind of thing. And then it's about fun and technology. So does it actually work? Like if we play it in the company and you know, does it work? Is it fun? All that stuff. Then it goes to player feedback, and then it goes to business and monetization, and then it goes to community and growth. So it's kind of quite straightforward now that it's done. It's like, oh, that makes sense.
But
it
honestly sounds like a good process for any creative endeavor.
Yeah, it might be.
Yeah.
But I've been like looking forward to actually maybe at some point when the events are back, I'll probably do like a bit about this. Specifically, because it would be interesting to get other people's take on like how they see it.
I think it's a great shout.
Yeah, it's endorsed by the Game Dev Show, I would say.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah. And it's your idea. Like, honestly, I would run with that first.
Oh, God, Luke.
Honestly, I'm going to go back. And I'm going to be like, guys, I've had this great idea for process, creativity.
It's a really good process. I like it.
I have Easy Management 101 lesson for you. It's that you always say, I didn't come up with this. This is your idea. And then...
Gotta give credit where credit is due.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that's why, like... oh, God.
But yeah, people bought it much easier once they made this cool thing. And they did. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's fantastic. I think it's something we should try and implement. Like, everyone should try and implement, you know? You know, with your new process, with the funnel, obviously we've been on your website and been doing research. When will we see the first outcome of that new funnel?
I'm pretty sure it's not going to be this year, but next year. I would be on the lookout somewhere in the first half maybe of next year. So hopefully I don't want to speak too much because the way we work is that the teams set their own kind of timelines and they figure out when they get things done and then we just support them. And I don't have any kind of, I always say like, I don't have power over your timelines. You set the timelines.
Makes sense.
And then I can of course ask you like, well, why isn't it done? You set the timeline, but yeah, that's the kind of idea because they know how to make the games. And I found that when you make people do it themselves and figure out these things, it's as much or if not more pressure for them. Because nobody else said it, so you can't say that,
That was one of the first management lessons I learned is I had a boss that would always we'd come up with an idea and they would agree to the idea. And then if I said, how much time do I have to get it done? They would say, when can you get it done? So you let people set the timeline, they'll give you a timeline and then they're more likely to care about adhering to that timeline versus if you give them one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's such a good idea, because I don't do that. I'm just like,
Have I done that to you before, Luke? I do that to everyone. When can you get it to me?
Do you know what's weird? I don't think you've ever asked me for anything, and I don't think that's probably a good thing either. I don't think that's a good thing. Yeah. You're probably like, God, that's never going to get done. It is quite funny because you talk about management and things. I was just thinking of like last year, I was managing like 15 people indirectly, but this year my roles changed quite a bit. And I think in about 4 weeks' time, I'll be managing no one. I'm just slowly seeing like.
Sad?
No, I can't. I think like, I'm one of those kids who plays well alone. But yeah.
Might be like a burden of the shoulders as well. I sometimes dream about the day I don't have so many people there.
Tell us about the Finnish game scene, because do you know what's crazy is how focused it is on like mobile app and game development, and it's like, but it's very, very mobile. Why is that?
Yeah, that's a common question people ask, and I think the current theory is that it's mostly Nokia. So because Nokia was such a huge, it was the biggest company in Finland at the time, and there were so many engineers, just literally like tens of thousands of engineers working on mobile. That kind of bled into the industry, other industries after Nokia kind of fell down, because they actually had quite good packages. Like in the beginning, when things started going badly, you could get money for founding new companies, and you could get money for.
So everyone's founding mobile devs for the golden parachute.
Yeah, it was. They made a deal, I think, with the government or something like that, where the idea was to try to help found as many companies as possible, try to get people to get new jobs and stuff like all that because it's a small country, so this is a huge impact when you're kind of having your biggest company cut down quite a lot. And that started a lot of companies. And then the universities also, like I was telling before, that there was a program for games companies specifically. It was a small one. I think the Tuonela company I worked for, that was one of the, I think, 15 companies that got started by that program. So you could get a small amount of money to start the company. And of those, I think maybe 2 are still left, but then second and third generation companies are still like, I sometimes feel like Fingersoft, it's not directly like a second generation company, but we have a lot of people who were in one of those companies. So you get this effect where all these learnings are going into new companies and things are going. But of course, I have to give credit to Remedy, Housemarque. Those are console PC companies. Probably know them, of course, like Control, Remedy. So they've upkept game development culture in Finland. But those are kind of the AAA style studios where there's not that much interaction, especially back then. It was like it's everywhere else that these people don't really talk to each other, not like nowadays. And nowadays they do. I know a lot of people from Housemarque, for example, really cool people. But then I would say Angry Birds and Rovio was the big thing. Like we could see that, you can actually make it. And mobile is much easier to develop. You don't need a lot of capital. Now I would say you probably do, but back then you could just, do it by yourself basically, or a few people. And
the problems have moved, haven't they? Like the challenges for mobile have almost moved from ease of access, because the access is basically still the same, but it's actually now visibility. And that, I think it's weird how visibility actually used to not be a problem, but an opportunity, because obviously it's mobile. Yeah. Whereas now visibility is a challenge because it's mobile. And it's Steam has the same thing, like PC Indie Scene has a completely the same thing.
And it's all any content, like it doesn't matter, it's music, games, there's just abundance of content everywhere, and it's very difficult to find things you like. Well, I guess music, Spotify owns the home thing, so
but
still, But if you're a musician trying to get your music being heard and actually make money,
wait and see.
Yeah, I'm quite worried about the trends where you have Apple Arcade, where that looks like a Spotify to me. Like you go there and then Apple controls what you get. Yeah. You don't get any say into what you get anymore. So, well, of course, if you're big enough, you might get, but that's kind of worrisome from development kind of studio, and especially independent one where a lot of mobile space is, well, now it's kind of consolidating, but ourselves, we like to be private and we like to do our own thing. So our kind of studios, at least, don't really like that kind of trends, but
it's scary though. It is scary. I think, there is a theme that comes up quite often is the saturation of the market, and It's just a concern, isn't it? Like, in some ways, could it be an inevitability that we end up in the same space as music? Film has kind of avoided it in some ways, but then TV hasn't with Netflix. And with the cinema and COVID, it's kind of compounded the problem of streaming services. But at the same time, it's almost like a savior at the moment because HBO, for example, can launch their films on their own streaming platform. I was going to ask you about, so I read your comment on Pocket Gamer. So obviously like the notorious Diablo Immortal announcement. And bless, I can't remember his name now, but bless the guy who did the announcement. I felt so, I just felt for him because that comment, have you guys got phones? I mean, I'm sure the mobile devs were like, yes, they do. But I just felt for him, right? And it was very interesting to see like Blizzard make that move, but not overly surprising given mobile's growth. I mean, how does that like ripple throughout the industry? Does it create validity for the mobile platform as a genuine gamer platform, or does it compound the scrutiny that mobile titles can carry with them, that they can be a cash grab? I mean, which way does it go?
Well, firstly, I think we're kind of well past the point where it actually is a gaming platform, because there's so many games that are played competitively in the mobile space, and it's like very serious stuff for a lot of people. But I get the point, like that the big AAA IPs and coming to mobile. I think it's gonna be a thing in the next few years. I don't think any kind of studio owner can resist. Like when you look at the kind of how revenue is kind of shared between different game industry kind of sections, it's just no way that they're not gonna want to be there. And of course there are some already. And also like Genshin Impact was kind of showing that if you do it right, you can make an awesome game where it's also like mobile and console and all that stuff. Yeah, definitely. I think done right, of course, it will make things better. I would like to play a great Diablo game on mobile, of course. But of course, if you do it badly, then that's always.
Yeah, I agree. By the way, like I think mobile is like, it's an incredible platform already. I guess you just get you do get people who are skeptical about having I suppose what you'd call like almost like an original player experience, or like a more archaic player experience. It will be interesting to see.
I've always I know our developers think about this a lot as well, where the ways, like for example, monetization and all work on mobile, and how like premium games we call pay first and play then games. It's a very interesting balance now that people just don't buy premium games on mobile. Of course, the market is there, but it's tiny compared to the free-to-play. And that's an interesting thing. How would that break? And if it breaks, like what will happen? And at least, so far, things like Apple Arcade haven't looked like there's cool games there. And of course, they're made in specifically for that thing. But I think there are big things moving right now with all the, for example, Apple and Google and all the antitrust stuff. And it feels like things are changing. Where, I don't know yet.
Yeah. It's the $1 million question, isn't it? I think it's mad how in 10 years, like back in the day, like paying for in-game like customization on a premium title, you've just spent like 50, 60 pounds on, or like, $70, $80. And then it was just outrage. And especially when people were like data mining or finding code already on the disk. So when you paid for that £7 DLC, it was literally just unlocking the content. It was so bad. But you look at it now and you look at loot boxes, and with premium games this is, because you've already paid your like 50, 60 quid, and it's homogenized and standardized to the point where people were just like, that's how. I mean, sometimes it's done quite badly, like Battlefront.
Yeah, and I have friends who play, let's say, FIFA. They spent like 2,000 euros on it or something.
Yeah,
it's mad,
isn't it? FIFA
I love FIFA, and I put the money in, and I don't care. It's and of course there's Angry Joe or something like that, which are raging about these kinds of things, and I find it fascinating where you have the old school, and then you have the new consumers who they always seen this since they were kids, and they they feel like this is just like normal thing to buy digital things. And I remember seeing it first time and I was like thinking, this is mad. Like, why would I pay for something digital after I have the game or whatever? So, but now well, that's what I do for a living.
Yeah.
So.
But then, do you know what's crazy though? It's the other way around. Like, you know, these mobile games that are free, but you play them for hundreds of hours, right? And you don't spend a penny. You're like, because it's a choice, because the game's free. Like, that's why it works so well with mobile.
Yeah. And just one comment is that our philosophy and mine has always been, we try to make the games in a way that you can play it. We don't really lock down pretty much any, I would say almost any content, and not at least anything that is important. So, because we've always felt that long term it's a better solution to kind of not be so aggressive, and then people stay for longer, and it seems to work for us really well. So
yeah,
just make good games, and let people
just make
play
good
them.
games.
Make things that are fun, and then people will have fun doing them.
Yeah,
and they'll want to do more fun.
And don't put loot boxes in them. But yeah.
Okay, let's end, Will, on just like a moment of retrospect and a moment of hope. So is there a moment in your career that you're particularly proud of, and what do you hope to do in the future?
I think I probably have to say the launch of Hill Climb Racing 2, because that was the one where, so we started making the game and we didn't know how it would end up. Like, making a sequel to a huge hit in the first place, it's scary as hell. And then the project was very difficult. It took like almost 2 years, and even to the last month before the launch, we didn't really like. It fell together just at the last moment. Okay, now it feels like it's there. And then when we launched it, it was like huge success. It was insane. And we had some technical issues, but it worked. And it still works. Like, I've done some analysis with Google, for example, recently, and they were like looking at it. They rarely see games which work for players stay for this long, and they come back so often. And I think we've really, really managed to nail the core thing of there. Like, what is Hill Climb Racing? How does it work? And why is it fun? So I was really, really happy about that.
Okay, so what's next?
I guess it kind of ties into the funnel thing, because I kind of got the whole thing rolling and got people on board, and then now people are kind of repeating that stuff there, and they believe it. It's a weird feeling when something like that is taken into use, and it's kind of scary as well, of course. It's like, you're like, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But of course, I've been telling them that the whole way, that, well, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But then if it doesn't, we'll fix it and do something else. But there's now games in production which are from kind of that background, and so we'll see how things go. And we also tweaked our internal models, how the teams are built, and I've kind of advocated the way it works now. It's kind of, we don't put people into projects. People have to apply for the project, and if we don't get enough people from inside the company, then we get people from outside the company. So there are only people who really want to work on that specific game in the project, and nobody else. So my hope and idea is that this is the way you make the coolest games. So we'll see. I have to wait a year or so.
Oh, well, I hope you're right. And I think I like that your answer for what do you hope to do in the future is basically contribute to the industry as a whole, and to more than just your own ideas and IP. And that's
definitely great. That's my main thing. It's always been like helping people make cool games, and
that's awesome.
Of course, talk about cool games and play cool games. And I'm all about games.
Oh, good answer. Well, I think we wrap it up there. Thank you for being our guest. This was really fun.
Yeah, super
fun. It was great. Absolute pleasure.
All right. Episode something of season 2 in the books. Kaylee Hurst and Luke Greenaway, your friends and hosts. And I want a third thing. Friends, hosts, and...
Tinkerers.
Yeah. Podcast tinkerers.
It's Friday.
It's Friday for us. For the listener,
it could be any time. Yeah, this could be coming to you from the future. It's not. Ville.
Luke, what was your favorite part of that episode?
You know that the PC console developer publisher coming into the mobile space, it's been happening for a long time now, but it's just interesting to hear his thoughts, because we've never asked the mobile dev that. What do they actually think it means? And the mobile platform always going to have validity. It had that for years now as an actual true gamers platform. But there are always going to be skeptics out there. There's actually quite a lot of people who are skeptical. So I liked hearing his response to that. The other thing I really enjoyed was his process-driven tinkering. Tinkering was part of his process drive. It's great that they've actually said, look, this is how we do ideas. We get people behind them. We covered a lot. What about you? What did you think?
Tinkering.
Just
tinkering for me.
You're a big tinker. You love
I'm a tinker all day.
Loves to tinker.
All day, all night. I don't think you can do this in the UK. In the US, you can get a novelty license plate where you like pick what it says.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we can.
Oh, okay.
We can. Yeah.
Okay, well, mine's going to be loves, LUVS, number 2, tinker. And I might have to abbreviate tinker.
Do you know what's so funny is, when we speak about the UK and the US, sometimes I think you think we live in castles and we go around on horses.
Don't you? Where is your horse, Luke? You've never even shown me your horse.
You guys have bottled water? You don't have a well? Sorry, I'm
probably just because you say schedule instead of schedule.
I don't. I say schedule. Schedule. Sorry. Schedule. It's so cute.
All right.
Okay. Sorry.
As your 2 podcast hosts that are always down to tinker,
clearly
we are signing off.
Yeah, we have to tell you that any thoughts, opinions that were made on today's show are those of the guests, Kaylee and I. If you would like to reach out to us, talk to us about tinkering, what you tinker.
If you're down to tinker. Yeah. GameDevShow@ptw.com if you want to email us.
Thank you.
And GG.
GG.
You too.
Game over.